Okay, well, I got on here, so then I'll just talk a little bit. We're going to be talking to Dave Knott, a seminary student, just waiting for him to come. I've never talked to Dave in person. He's a student at Log Seminary. Maybe he'll tell us more about that. And Dave Knott has entered. Thank God. We're waiting for Dave's audio to connect. There he is, Dave. And I'm waiting for things. Can you hear me or see me? Let me see. What am I doing wrong here? Maybe we're still connecting. It took Andy and I a minute or so to get going.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
All right. Can you see me?
I can see you. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, wow. What a pleasure, Dave.
Nice to finally speak with you, Don.
Finally. This is better than writing, I think. We had a great time with Andy a little while ago.
I watched it.
Was it helpful, encouraging?
It was. He's always a blessing to speak with, and he always has so much insights and stuff. It just, no doubt you're gonna learn something just from talking to him. He's like a walking encyclopedia.
Yeah. He finds books, Google books, PDFs. I remember when he found Venerable Bede's commentary on Ezra and Nehemiah for me. I had no idea it even existed. I was reading all of Bede, and boom, he comes up with this out of nowhere.
Yeah, I have a lot of books, ebooks that he sent me, and most of them are the old ones that you can't buy, and even if you could buy them, they'd be in the thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So I have those, but Andy's been very helpful to me during my seminary years, because the seminary is good, but because it is American Presbyterian, they leave out certain authors, and so I had Andy to fill the void on what books I should get to have a fully balanced knowledge.
Yeah, there's Swiss Reformed, there's German
Yeah,
Reformed,
there's all kinds.
Christian Reformed, URCNA, you name it. But they're more in the Westminsterian Presbyterian.
Right.
Which it's what is your view of the school?
It's very good. I could not ask for anything more. I'm 65 years old. I always wanted to go to seminary. I could never afford it. I came from an impoverished home. Just a mother. My dad died when I was 4.
I remember that. Yeah.
And growing up in the 60s, there wasn't a whole lot for single women to do other than get their Social Security and get their food stamps. And my mother was a proud woman. She wouldn't accept food stamps, and so she'd, clean people's houses, waitress, do whatever she could. And so we grew up, like I said, not with everything, but we were happy. And for me to get school at this seminary at this point, I had dropped out of high school, dropped out of school so that I could get a job and give my mother money.
Yeah.
And I gave her my whole check. And when I became regenerated when I was between 20 or 21. And there was a independent fundamental Baptist church. And that's where I got regenerated. But the pastor there was Calvinist, and he was a very good preacher and taught me quite a bit of things. Well, he left. They left because the church run him out because he was Calvinist.
Oh,
And so I left that church and joined another church because they got some used car salesman type guy of a pastor. So I joined another church, and then I went down to Alabama, met my wife, my future wife, and she was Presbyterian.
oh,
So I started going to that church and said, man, this is a lot more what I want or what I'm hungry for than I was getting in these Baptist churches. And so I joined that church, and
was it confessional or?
it was when we first joined. It was confessional. It's not even. It's so liberal now. The last time I was there, I think it's PCUSA. But her great grandfather donated the land for the church, donated the wood for the church.
Wow.
And they built a church, and there's a big cemetery on that church, and there's a lot of Confederate veterans buried there, and that's how old the church is. And like I said, we went there a couple times. Her family still goes to that church because it's been in their family for years. Their parents went there, and that, and but we moved to West Virginia just to get out of the heat.
And you're in West Virginia, so you get a little snow and ice and wind. And
yeah, in Alabama, it was just, summer and spring. Those are the two seasons.
That's why that's why one of the reasons we settled here at Lejeune, because we're from Toronto and Detroit and snow. We just wanted the kind of that no snow world.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm from Boston. I don't mind the snow. I don't mind the cold weather. But that heat was killing me, buddy. It was killing me, and I couldn't get out fast enough. But
speaking of Southern Presbyterian, we did a music concert at First Presbyterian about 30 miles from here. It's kind of inland and it's old. And I got to talking to one of the old elders. He must have been 80-ish. And I asked him, I said, do you ever talk about the Westminster Standards? And he goes, yeah, we used to do that, but we don't do it anymore, which, and then this must have been maybe 10 years ago. And we're in a very agricultural area just outside Lejeune, about 10 miles. And there's a little Presbyterian church over on 9 Mile Road, really small. And they asked me to come and do pulpit supply one Sunday. So I did, preached the sermon. Place was full, kind of back out in the woods. And I got to the back door, and there was a little old lady. She must have been in her 90s and certainly 80s. She tugged on my sleeve and said, you mentioned the Westminster Shorter Catechism, and my grandfather was a pastor in this church, and he made me memorize the Westminster Shorter Catechism. And she's still living in the area. Her father, at that time, buried up in over there. And the South was notorious for catechetical memory work.
The old Southern Presbyterians, I would take over the Northern Yankee Presbyterians any day.
You're a Dabney man.
There's some good, solid, and of course back then, a lot of the liberalism that was around today wasn't around back then.
Yeah.
So I think even the Yankee Presbyterian churches were a little bit more conservative back in the day. But the Southern Presbyterians, I mean, some of those guys are my favorites. I love, reading them. And Andy showed me a couple of the guys, and I got the books from Banner of Truth. They were on sale for $10 each, hardcover. So I got them.
Yeah.
Plummer.
Yep. Yeah, Plummer. Yeah.
Yeah, he's solid.
And Dabney, of course, and Thornwell, and
Right.
and Girardot. I think he had a French Huguenot background, if I'm not mistaken, and then came over. He was in Columbia, South Carolina, buried up over in there in the cemetery north of. It's now an ARP church where Dr. Derek Thomas is at, still going and still inerrancy and confessional and all that.
Yeah. I have great or whatever, I don't know how many greats, grandfather that fought for North Carolina 1st Cavalry.
Oh, wow.
So but as far as theology, like I said, Andy's introduced me to a lot of Southern Presbyterians. He's introduced me to a lot of Dutch theologians, which I really love. Those guys are real good. And
Protestant Reformed men.
yeah. And of course, today, a lot of them churches are liberal. Liberalism always comes. Churches don't go from liberal to conservative; they go from conservative to liberal. It's like a erosion.
The Protestant Reformed people up in the Grand Rapids area are still rock solid. I read their journal. I read their denominational newspaper, and they are what they were when they started in 1925.
Well, I know Beeks Seminary. Is that what the one you're talking about? And the one in Illinois?
No, I'm talking about the one in Grand Rapids, Protestant Reformed Theological Seminary.
Yeah, that's Joel Beek.
No.
Oh, it's not.
I don't think so. Protestant Reformed is Hoeksema, Hanko,
Right.
Free Offer of the Gospel, the Covenant of Grace is with the elect.
Yeah, those guys are. I got some of Paul Casima's work, the Triple Knowledge about
Yes.
And he's been helpful. Yeah, I got his 2-volume set of dogmatic theology.
Yes.
I've got quite a bit of work from that group. They're very solid too.
Yeah, so they've hung on. Now the CRC, no, women's ordination and other things as well. They still have some conservatives among them, but it's a mixed multitude.
Well, the churches are falling out of that CRC like rabid dogs running. They can't get out fast enough. They started out in the 1980s as tending towards liberalism, and now 40 years later, I wouldn't let my dog play frisbee at Calvin University.
Yeah, I can't comment. I read the Calvin Theological Journal, and it has some good articles, but I only do it to, stay in touch with everybody and what's going on. I wouldn't go to that seminary. That's for sure.
Yeah, they've been going down the slopes for 40 years now.
Yeah, and there's the URCNA, United Reformed Church, is pulled out of the CRC, and they're solid. They're out in Iowa somewhere, the seminary, Mid-America Theological Seminary, small, maybe 30, 40 students, but their journal is rock solid. And I've listened to a sermon at an OPC church in Raleigh that has a graduate of Mid-America, and he was fantastic to listen to. Sang a couple of psalms and one hymn, good liturgy, so very, very So I don't know. Maybe when time, God willing, we'll interview somebody from there and catch up. But it's Dutch, three forms of unity. So it's good.
Yeah.
It's encouraging.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's encouraging, like, to talk to Andy and hear these 100-year-old, 3-4 generations deep people who are catechized. I mean, that 95-year-old guy that Andy visits. I mean, that guy talks anew and afresh. I don't know him. He doesn't know me, but wow.
Yeah. Someone being catechized and, as a youth, and then maintaining their membership in the church. If the preacher's uh, in tune, he will teach adult catechism classes for a Sunday school class. You know, it's it. Catechisms were created by the reformers because the Catholic Church didn't have them, and the reformers figured that because the Catholics didn't have them, a couple hundred years later, look how bad they are. So we need to get a document saying what our beliefs are so that in 100 years from now, our descendants won't change our beliefs. They can always go back to this document for what they believe and what they don't believe. And the churches that use the catechism, I mean, they'll stay true to the faith. If somebody comes in and never mentions, they get a preacher that never mentions the catechism or starts speaking about something that would go against the catechism. I mean, the people in general would say, "Wait a minute, they're saying what we believe. Why? Who elected this guy to come in
I'm in January 16th. I'm going down to Reformation Bible College
here?"
for a conference on Professor Machen. I'll be talking to some of the professors there, and I'm going to ask that, do you require catechetical memory work?
Yeah, it's very. I think if you grow up with it,
Yeah,
you don't have to work at memorization. You'll
it's
over the years you'll
it's in the
have the
bones.
basics.
In the bones. Now, did you have to memorize it with?
I had for seminary. I had to memorize the shorter catechism.
Okay.
The Westminster.
I know Reformed Theological Seminary, they've got 5 or 6 satellite schools.
Yeah.
They require it for an MDiv, while Westminster never did. So I think that's deficient.
The Westminster out of Pennsylvania, they still have good books. They still have some good preachers, but that seminary has been tanking for the last 20 years.
Huh.
So as a matter of fact, there's a church right here in West Virginia.
You're in Elkins, right?
Yes, sir. Elkins, West Virginia.
That's kind of a small town.
Well, here it's a budding metropolis.
Oh.
I think there's 3,000 people in the town. So that's a bigger town for around here.
Oh.
But there's a church, and there's only one Knott in West Virginia for the PRC. And they recently
Protestant Reformed?
Yeah, PC, yeah. No, Presbyterian Reformed.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that. Is that
maybe it's called Protestant? It's a Presbyterian church.
Okay.
And they ordained a pastor that has not been in 1 hour of seminary.
That can't be the PCA, because I think they require 90-hour MDiv.
Well, there is a provision in the Presbyterian Church of America that allows people that want to become missionaries to go on a mission and not have a MDiv. And they used that loophole to get a pastor that never had 1 hour of seminary training. And as a result, they are now using, they say they use the shorter confession, but they also have Keller's New City Catechism. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of it. Is that Tim Keller's?
Yeah. Well, Tim Keller is an Darwinist. He doesn't believe in creation. And he wrote that. If you look at that catechism, there's nothing on creation. And
I need to look at it. I've stayed away from Keller for a long time.
yeah.
And why he would need a new one when the Westminster Shorter is just
Right. It was, I don't know why any church worth their salt would use his catechism. It's not like they don't have a catechism and they want to find one to use. But that's what's going on in West Virginia. That's the only Reformed church that's near me.
Are you thinking of doing any church planting, or are you just
I'm too old to do church planting.
okay?
I'm 65. I'm in good health, but I don't know what I'm going to be like in 2 years.
Yeah.
I would like to pastor a small church. I don't want one of these big churches where you have to micromanage and all that stuff. I just want a small church where I can minister to the people. And if that happens, fine. If it doesn't, I'm happy just studying, sitting at home studying.
Yeah.
But I did apply for 2 churches. I applied for an OPC church, and I got the job.
Oh,
However, I didn't take it once I found out they had 16 active members. I didn't want to move myself and my wife halfway across the country for a church that might close down in 3 months.
sure.
So I didn't take that one. There was another one, and it was a RCA church, and they loved me. I had to turn in like 5 or 6 sermons, a lecture, and had 2 or 3 interviews, on Zoom. And they loved me. They wanted me. They were already asking me what date I could come up and do this and do that. Well, when they brought it to their snod, or their classic, as they call it, he said, well, the guy comes from an unaccredited seminary, and we really don't think that's the guy for you. So they wrote me a letter saying sorry, and I got no hard feelings. I'm glad I found out before I went there.
Sure.
But the RCA, their main seminary is Calvin Seminary.
And Western over.
Yeah, over in Washington, I think, or Oregon.
No, on what it's west of Grand Rapids, Western Theological Seminary, right on Lake Michigan there.
Oh, okay.
That was historically where they but I'm sure they work through Calvin too.
Well, I just, I'm just glad I found out before I went there. But my my I'm glad they like me. I mean, the elders and the search committee, they all like me. They like my sermons. They like the answer to the questions I gave them. So, that's like a testing ground to see if I could withstand the uh, scrutiny of a search committee or a board of elders. But I'm still going to be looking. I mean, I think I'll always look. Um, but the problem is, there's so many bad churches today.
And I won't go into the Episcopal Anglican stuff here. Oh man, what a zoo! Snakes in the tall grass. Sometimes
Even in Reformed circles, there are some bad churches.
Yeah.
Let alone dispensationalism or these other brands of churches, whatever they have. Just within the Reformed circles, there's enough to.
I'm hoping to do some interviews with some PCA. We'll see where it goes. To kind of now that I've discovered this new outlet of Zoom, which can go to YouTube, we'll see where it can go. But I've got some people in mind I want to interview.
Yeah, I think it would be a profitable thing for you and for your watchers, the listeners or whatever.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are unaware of a lot of the issues that are alive and well.
Yeah, like this revoice movement in the PCA. I
Oh,
was traveling around that, I think it was summer, a few years back, and I was going to go to it. And then I said, nah, it's more, another 500 miles up over there. And I was down in Birmingham. And anyways, I didn't go. I wish I had. And now it's created a rupture. I'm on the trail. It's basically, trying to shoehorn into the PCA the LBGTQ stuff, which is unimaginable.
well, that snake has raised its head significantly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 65, and I remember maybe someone had an uncle that was queer. Now,
Yeah.
it seems like they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And the legal representation, the legal course they have is being encouraged by the government, by the state, by, if you say anything against them, you're a racist or a fascist or a homophobe, which the word homophobe is not even a word, it's made up.
Yeah.
Crying out loud.
I'm being helped considerably, but actually by the Roman Catholic newspaper, which is tracking the legal cases and looking at it from the standpoint of religious freedom with this law that was just passed for Respect of Marriage Act.
Yeah.
Which may withdraw legal defenses for those with religious objections, and that affects Roman Catholic schools and universities and hospitals.
Well, they would have a legal case for sure, and they certainly have the money to go to court.
Yeah.
So that and I'm not. I mean, I appreciate what the Catholics do as far as build hospitals and orphanages, but theologically, they're at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. Yep. False soteriology. They confess the Nicene Creed, and they sound orthodox when they talk about the two natures of Christ in one person, blah blah blah. But like Calvin said, they have a half Christ.
Yeah, they don't have a full Christ, that's for sure.
Yeah, he dried up the blood of Christ.
Yeah, it's amazing once even before I went to seminary, I was aware of a lot of the issues. But now through the books that I've read and the guidance of Andy, my eyes have been opened so much that my poor wife, she hears me all the time, and I got to say something. I'm not going to sit there, see something, and say nothing.
I just got a notice that we got 10 minutes
10
left.
minutes. Yeah.
Did you get a notice?
Yeah, it just showed up on top of my screen.
Okay.
But I'm excited about going to doctorate, getting my doctorate.
Wonderful.
Of course, then again, the doctorate is only as good as the people giving it out. So I've got to find a decent place to get one.
Oh, what's wrong with Log College, Log Seminary?
Well, the problem is because I'm over 35 years old, and when I applied to the college for MDiv, they didn't accept my bachelor's degree.
Oh.
So I had to take a BDiv, which is the same exact course.
Yes.
As a MDI, as their MDiv. I think once they changed to Log College, they changed a couple of books, but it's still the main course of the MDiv. And so I took that, and not all colleges are gonna hold that against me, especially when I have 2 semesters of Greek and 2 semesters of Hebrew. I think that's a MDiv. If it doesn't have a Greek and Hebrew, it's not an MDiv.
Absolutely.
And so I've got 2 years of that, and I amazingly, I forget if it was Greek or Hebrew, but one of them I got 100% in, and the other one I got like a 98 or something. And in English, I'd probably get an F. I mean, my English was so bad, so I had to learn terms that most people are used to. Like, I know what a verb is and a noun is, but prepositional phrase, I was lost. So I had to, learn those things before I could learn the Greek thing. And now I know it sounds crazy, but I know more about Greek and Hebrew than I do English.
I remember a friend of mine telling me that's when he really learned grammar, was when he did Greek and Hebrew, because you had to know those term participles and verbs and demonstrative and relative pronouns and all that stuff.
And I had to parse so many different Greek words and stuff, and but it was all beneficial. And I tell you, honest to God, I thought that Greek and Hebrew was going to break me. I thought I would end up dropping out because
especially Hebrew.
Oh, I did better at Hebrew than I did Greek.
Oh.
But I just thought them 2 classes were going to kill me. I was never going to get past them. I would have to drop out. And I ended up, I did a lot of prayer. I couldn't have done it on my own. I prayed every night. I had a fear of not passing.
Yeah.
And that kept me motivated.
Yeah. Now, could you get an undergraduate through Log College, or would that be?
If I could get a bachelor's degree at Log College, and then they would upgrade my BDiv to a MDiv. But it seems kind of backwards doing a Master of Divinity and then going back and doing a bachelor's. I'd rather invest the time in a doctorate somewhere.
Yeah.
So
What was your bachelor? Where did you do your bachelor's? And
I did my bachelor at some flunky little school that is a know nothing. I mean, I did it in a year.
oh,
So, you know, it really wasn't that substantial. It was, I would consider it a certificate program,
yeah,
but you know, they called it a bachelor's degree, and that was highly inflated. Um, but it did get me used to the habit of study because I was out of school for so long and haven't studied anything. So I developed a good work ethic. I bet every day I worked 8 to 10 hours at Log Seminary on the
oh,
work.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I learned how to study and shortcuts to study in and tips to study in,
And you had one of the best men that I could ever imagine you to have with Andy.
that was providence.
Yes.
Because I already had in mind who I wanted to be my mentor, and he said he would be my mentor. And then when the time came, he said he's sorry, he had to back out. He's got too much stuff going on, and Andy picked me up. Well, it turned out that this original guy I wanted, I mean, he was trying to get me to read people like Meredith Klein. You know, and that guy's a bag of air. So I got Andy, and he gives me solid advice. If I got any question, I can ask him, and he'll answer it right away. And I totally trust his answers. Um, he's a good, solid guy.
Yeah.
His church, probably learned now over the last 3 years, and they learned in the last 10 years. Um, he's a great teacher.
Yeah.
He's always available. You couldn't ask for anything more.
Yep, I completely agree. I've known him. We've figured that out today. I guess it's 13 years, and I kind of grown up with his family and his two daughters and that little guy Aiden, who's a howl.
Oh yeah, we love that guy. We always check and see what he's wearing, and
Yeah. So Andy and I have developed a close friendship through Facebook. And it was a delight to talk to him today. Oh my, like that.
I've spoken to him on the phone probably 3 times, and each time it was hard to get off because I was enjoying the conversation. He was enjoying the conversation, and I see my wife getting madder and madder. So all right, buddy, I gotta go. We'll talk to you later.
By the way, what did you do work-wise in the past? Are you retired? What's going on?
I used to be an offset printing press operator. I ran
1 minute, 40 seconds.
Yeah, I ran a Heidelberg offset printing press, which took a 28-inch by 40-inch sheet of paper, and I ran that for years. I printed for Microsoft, Electrolux. I was a shop manager at one place, and I've just been in the business for 40 years.
Okay. So you're retired now.
Yeah.
Listen, we should go. Do you want to close us in prayer?
Yes, sir. Lord, I thank you for this fellowship that we shared. I pray that it would be a blessing to the listeners, an encouragement. Lord, we thank you for what you did on the cross, saving us. Lord, you provide us, you care for us, Lord, and may we continually remember that and keep it in our mind because we're so easily cast aside and turn our backs on you. Father, we thank you for your love. We thank you for Christ. We thank you for everything. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Gotta go.
Okay, buddy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.